Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Post Political Podcast. I'm the host, Derek Britton, and I wanted to welcome everyone tonight. We are going to be talking with Tom. I can't wait to bring him on. First up, we have the promos. First, we have the Vermin Supreme Institute. Our purpose is to inspire social evolution through the disruption of authoritarianism, to promote compassionate activism, and to spread the knowledge of redacted history. Through the use of humor, direct action, and mutual aid, we uplift the disaffected, the disenfranchised, and the disempowered. And you can see the link to the Vermin Supreme Institute in the comments. Also, we have Brewed Coffee down in Lexington, Kentucky. Check out Brewed Coffee. They have also beer on tap as well. You can check out my affiliate link also in the comments for basically to go into their shop and take a look at any of their, mugs, shirts, hats, whatever you want to go in there and buy and help support the podcast. That would be great. Thank you all. And then lastly, we have my shop. So if you are looking for an awesome fanny pack or a sweet hat to wear, get the Post Political Podcast merch. If you use the coupon code UNITY, you get 10% off your entire order. So go to postpoliticalpodcast.com/shop. And that is all. So here we have tonight, we have Thomas Queter. He is a activist and also a New York Senate candidate. He is also advocating for a group called Nug of Knowledge, which you're going to learn a lot more about tonight. And I'm just excited to have him on. So let's bring him in. Here's Tom. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been a we've been dealing with a lot of snow. I'm sure you guys had some as well, being in the Northeast as well. But yeah, no, it's been a little bit of dealing with cleaning up some of that. So
I apparently got on camera without my lighter.
Oh no. Oh, and it's breaking up a little bit. The video for some reason seems to be frozen a bit as well. We didn't have any issues on the pre-production meeting, but I think you're back. Yeah, it seems like you're back live.
See me?
I can see you. Yeah, it's one at a time right now for some reason. We like one frame at a shot, but I think we can hear you just fine. So it's we can have the conversation, and hopefully the video will fix kind of as we go. But yeah, first off, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about how you got to the Libertarian Party, or how do you get to third parties in general. People have a lot different journeys to get here, so I'd love to hear kind of what your journey was, I guess, to get here.
Well, my journey did not begin on the left or the right. I was never a Democrat or a Republican. I actually, when I went through political participation in government class in high school, is what it was called. It was the Bush versus Gore year.
Oh yeah.
And I was absolutely disgusted. I refused to, because they're trying to sign you up to vote, right? And you got to pick your party. And I said, I'm not picking either of these.
That's great.
And the only other third party they talked about was the Green Party, which really just didn't talk about enough of my issues.
Yep.
And I was actually a little bit ostracized for that, because I wouldn't be a Democrat or a Republican. This isn't a football game. This is our government and our lives. And apparently that was hard to understand at that point in my life by everyone around me. But let's see. I like to tell people that I've been a Libertarian since the 5th grade. I had a really good teacher in the 5th grade. He was really big on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in the 5th grade.
That's great.
And teaching you, why we founded our country and how the people actually got here. We were basically expelled criminals, most of us, right? If you weren't a slave or an expelled criminal, you were a lesser-liked overlord sent to oversee the criminals and slaves.
That's super true.
That was feudalism at the time.
Right.
And, that we formed our nation the way we did to allow us the most freedoms with the least government overreach. And we think about the Boston Tea Party. That was over, what was it, like a 1 cent or 3 cent tax on tea?
Right.
And look at our world today. Everything is taxed and retaxed and retaxed.
Right. 100%.
The raw materials are taxed, the processing is taxed, the production is taxed, the shipping is taxed, the box store is taxed, and when you buy it, it's taxed.
Right. And they use taxes to manipulate, try to manipulate us with, they have sin taxes for things that are harmful to folks, and they have, they try and manipulate markets with taxes as well. It's even more than just, applying it for whatever reason they want to fund things. They also try to manipulate things with it, which is just crazy, to think of what we came from and where we're at now.
So, I know you wanted to discuss, how did they really get here, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, I do feel like I've been a libertarian since the 5th grade. Around 2012 was when somebody first called me a libertarian, and I was like, "What's a libertarian?" And so I got thinking about it and looking into it a little more. And then 2016 happened, Gary Johnson,
yep.
Right? And ultimately, one, his political record was pretty good prior to his run. And I hate to do this, but that bit he did on the news where he faked a heart attack over having smoked weed, that really clinched it. Because when I was 10 years old, my doctor knew that I had issues handling opiates.
Mm-hmm.
I had been accidentally prescribed an overdose when I was 8. And I really didn't like them, and they really didn't do much for me that was good. They did more that was negative.
Right.
And so, my mother leaves the room to do some paperwork or something, and he goes, you might consider trying cannabis. Which I'm using the word cannabis on purpose here. Yep. A lot of people don't know that the word marijuana is racist. It was instilled into the mindset of our people, our society. Oh, now I can't see you.
Oh, I can see you. I can see you basically in freeze frame, but we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's recording good for you. So, they used the term marijuana instead of cannabis, despite the fact that all the doctors who were prescribing it at the time called it cannabis, either indica or sativa. Yep. And despite the fact that when George Washington grew it at the White House, it was called cannabis.
Right.
They called it marijuana because it sounds like a Latin American word, and it is. But they want you to have that racial undertone to it.
Right.
And they want you to hate somebody so that they can make it illegal. And they want to make it illegal because it solves too many problems.
Yeah.
It's great for our industry, everything from textiles to building materials. But more importantly, right now with our healthcare situation, it's a very, very cheap alternative to so many expensive things.
Definitely.
So then 2019 comes around, and I'm in my own desperate situation, having been a disabilities advocate for 7 or 8 years, actively seeking out individuals in specific situations that I know I can advise or find them some information or an organization that can help them. Most often people get stuck in a rut and they feel like, well, the government's not going to give me what I need, so obviously I can't get it. That's the mindset that people can end up in. And the first thing you have to do is convince them that it's okay to ask for what they need to be happy. That is a heart-wrenching situation to be in, that you have to try to convince someone that it's okay to seek happiness.
Right.
So I ended up in a situation where the wheelchair that had been provided to me through government healthcare welfare systems 5 times prior, same model wheelchair 5 times prior had been provided for me. And it's very unique, it's very rugged, it's very safe.
Yep.
It does everything that I need to do, and it keeps me healthy and safe and active. A lot of people forget that activity is important to your health. Even if you're in a wheelchair, being in a wheelchair doesn't mean you don't do anything. It just means you do it differently.
Yep.
And I was looking at having to go into a $19,000 expense wheelchair to the taxpayer that wouldn't do nearly what I needed, and would likely, within a few months, result in my being bedridden. just because the seating options weren't there.
Right.
Suspension options weren't there.
Right.
The chair I'm in now is pretty rugged, and yes, it can climb the hill out back. It can climb a washed-out tractor trailer or a 6-inch curb, but that's not really the important part. Because it can do those things, it has a good suspension.
Yep.
And because it has a good suspension, it's appropriate for me.
Right.
So, I had been crowdfunding individual needs or assisting people in setting up their own crowdfunding movements for their own needs for years. And I was in a situation where I couldn't get the wheelchair I needed, and it was looking pretty desperate for me. And I was, for whatever reason, didn't occur to me, I should just crowdfund what I need. And, I'm not really, I struggled with the same thing that I was just talking about, asking for help,
Right.
believing that I deserved to be happy. It can be very, very difficult because of the situation I've been in all my life. But a couple of friends of mine, who lo and behold turned out to be libertarians, when I spotted this one, it was actually on eBay, 20 years old, never used. This happens a lot with equipment. It's out there, doesn't get used, it gets thrown away, goes to the dump.
Right.
Your tax dollars pay for it, and it goes to the dump instead of being reused. So it had literally less than 4 days worth of use on it.
Oh, wow.
And it's beast. And it's got the most features of any of the same model chair I ever had.
Yep.
I've been in the same chair since I was 15 years old. For a reason.
Right.
So, they convinced me to crowdfund it. And, they kind of led the charge and led the way. And, of course, my family and community helped out. And guess what? Most of them ended up being libertarians. And if they're not libertarians now, they were already libertarian leading.
Yep.
Which is great. And it takes between 6 and 24 months, in my experience, to get a wheelchair through New York State system.
Wow.
How long do you think it took us to get this one?
Whatever the shipping time was, I got to imagine.
It was about a month for crowdfunding and about a month to ship it and finish up the modifications for the seat.
That's awesome.
And how much do you think it cost?
I got to imagine it was, quite expensive, probably close to 10 grand or something like that.
It was $6,500 with shipping from Austin, Texas.
Wow.
And it was a friend who volunteered to make the seat modification. He's a metal worker.
Yep.
The cushion, which is very, very important if you're sitting in your chair all the time.
Right.
They treat the materials with antimicrobial substances so that it keeps you safe and healthy.
Right.
Where you're constantly touching the cushion. I have never seen a cushion made of the same exact materials from the same exact manufacturers, paid for by tax-paid systems, for less than $1,200.
Wow.
Do you know how much it cost me to source the same exact materials from the same exact companies and actually make a better cushion because I got a better grade of foam? Guess.
I can't imagine. I'm guessing it's got to be, a ton better because of the last, back and forth. So maybe half like the chair, maybe?
$30.
Wow.
From $1,200 to $30.
Wow.
Because we got government out of that equation.
That's incredible.
And it wasn't hard. I made a couple phone calls. It took less phone calls for this cushion by sourcing the materials directly than it would to get a new one through the system.
Right.
That's insane. So then, 2019 rolls around, and I'm in that dilapidated chair that's barely holding together. And actually, my aide at the time, he was well versed in fixing it on the fly because it had routine problems, right?
Right.
So I get to go to a Larry Sharp event, and I got there ahead of time, and I had a conversation with him, and then what was then the secretary of the state committee, the interim state committee, came over and asked me to form Shenango, but I hadn't actually received the chair yet. We were only like 3 weeks into raising the money.
Yep.
So I said, I'd like to, but I can't. And unfortunately, somebody else walked in, said they were doing that, and that's great. Then, Another month goes by, and we get the chair in order, and I'm still in contact with the person who was forming the county organization. And, we're talking, and his life, did what lives do. It didn't get easier, it got harder.
Yep. And
he wanted someone else to take it over. And I did.
That's great.
Within 8 weeks, of having given, I know we're libertarians, but I'm going to say technical authority to form the county organization, we had formed it.
Yep.
Another 8 weeks after that, and we had more than doubled enrollment.
That's great.
We didn't get to constitute that year because we had to hit 90 libertarians in the county to constitute the committee, but we hit 87.
Wow!
Right?
That's an impressive first year. That's a pretty big growth, pretty quick.
Most of our counties are doubling somewhere from around 50% a year in New York.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. I mean, you're seeing numbers in the tens of thousands go up statewide.
Right.
So, then I'm chair of this committee, and I'm in Shenango rural area, winter area. I don't drive. I have to rely on someone else driving me.
Yep.
And so my vice chair, he was good about making sure I got to our meetings. He was good about making sure we had a place to have our meetings. And then COVID. Right. So during that period, I had been doing two other things. I've been working on a presidential campaign for the Libertarian Party.
Yep.
And I had been working with a group of people in District 52 trying to find someone to run against who ended up being my opponent. Because at the end of that, it ended up being me who ran. Because after 4 months, I knew the most and had the time and the ambition. So, that was all how I kind of got here, really.
That was my introduction to you a bit too. Was during that run. So I kind of saw some of your stuff through Brianna Coyle was sharing a lot of that stuff. So I saw you and a lot of the videos and stuff, and then working with Spike, I saw some of the stuff that he was doing to he endorsed you as well, and that was kind of my first exposure to you actually, Tom, was during that campaign, and I saw a lot of a person that was actually out there in the community doing what doing cleanups, doing what we preach, which is kind of rare. I saw a lot of candidates run, and there are good candidates all across the country for sure, but there were folks that were running and doing a few events, and COVID did have a massive impact on that. But no, I was super impressed. You were out there, like I said, doing community cleanups and being very visible, kind of volunteering to do things in the community. And I immediately had a good, kind of feeling and reaction when I saw that. So that was kind of my first impression of you, actually, at that moment, basically.
I think the advantage I had is that I come from the rural side of District 52, and in the rural areas of District 52 in particular, voluntary action, just helping your neighbor, is something we all do. It's in my blood. It's very libertarian. I've always volunteered for this, that, and everything, right down to the women's auxiliary down at the firehouse. And why not?
That's great. Yeah, and it would be, it's great to see communities like that, and it's tough when you see, that kind of broken down, especially, even nowadays with it feels like almost, kind of life moves too fast, and people use that kind of as an excuse or whatever. But in reality, it doesn't take much to check on your neighbor, make sure they're doing okay, especially during COVID. I mean, there's a lot of folks not doing okay because they're, either, quarantined themselves, in their house or just not being able to go out and do as much. So, no, we need more of that kind of neighborly, voluntary, action kind of in our communities and stuff. And I love to see it. It was great.
Well, and where I am, it's still common for people and neighbors to come together to do something like paint a house or fix a porch.
That's great.
It becomes a social event as well.
Right.
And we're big on feeding each other. You might not know this, but if you're a libertarian and you're coming through Shenango County and you hit me up with a plan, I will feed you.
I've seen some of the photos. You do pretty damn good job. I see a lot of venison recently, a lot of different stuff. Your plates look pretty damn good. I gotta say.
And I do it on the cheap. I eat cheaper than most people I know.
That's awesome.
So, I'm a disabilities advocate. I'm obviously an advocate for the Libertarian Party, an activist as well.
Yep.
And a candidate. I'm not going to put that one down. To that note, you can go to my website, tomfor52.com. If you watched my race and you want a souvenir, the merch is still available. That's pretty cool. But, I think about the problems that we all have and how they're intertwined. And for me, a lot of it comes back to health care and welfare. Part of my platform that was more controversial was that I wanted to remove income restrictions for those who are on disability welfare. And that's because I'm familiar with the huge gap. Right? Because often your SSI, whatever disability welfare you're getting, is justification for the government health care you're getting.
Right.
And so you can't lose one without the other. And then it's no longer just a matter of income. Right? Because you might lose that $800, $900 a month, but what you're really losing is tens of thousands in healthcare that you might need to stay alive.
Right.
And the gap between being able to get a job that covers that, either in its own financial gain or through insurance, and not, is so wide that you're left with this choice of live on welfare and stay alive, or get a job and die.
Right.
And it's not just die, it's suffer and die. Let's not forget that. It is always suffer and die. And I hate to say like those strong statements, but we need to hear them. We need to understand what this is. And if we look at the predominant numbers and the way this is going, we have more and more people on disability. We have more and more people qualifying for disability, right? And what do we lack in New York State in particular? A healthy labor force. We lack an economic labor force. I mean, that's a resource to a state or a community.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So if we're going to give people help, why are we punishing them by not allowing them to seek their own income outside?
Right.
And the problem here becomes, I know for my situation, I get SSI, but I also get SS from my father, who was a veteran and deceased. So my SSI is whittled down to around $100 a month, which means if I make $100 a month, I lose my SSI.
Right.
I keep his SS, but I lose my SSI, and if I lose my SSI, I lose my health care.
Right.
And that health care to me right now is, 3.5 times 3. That's, I don't know, it's a lot.
Right.
No, 4.5 times 3. It's $13,500 worth of one treatment that I need to keep my fracture rate low, because that's the nature of my disability. I can't make up that $13,500 that quickly or that easy. But you know what I could do? I could work from home remotely. I could become a writer. I could sell a book. I could do whatever. Right? We have these options. This is 2020, not 1940.
Yep.
And there are far more options for us at home.
Absolutely.
Including remote education. You get your degree or whatever it is you want to do.
Yep.
We should not be hindering those options. And let's just look at the numbers. So 20% of the population is said to have a disability.
Yep.
If half to 3/4, that's 10 to 15%, are on disability welfare. Okay.
Yep.
Now, what if we put them back into our economy?
Right.
What if they got that low monthly check and they got that health care, but they were also able to earn $10,000 or $200,000 besides, upon which I'm not in favor of paying taxes, but the system we're living in, right? Yep. If there was a taxable income, don't you think maybe that would help fix our budget?
Right. Right.
And improve their lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing too. I mean, think about, people who have passions to do something that's being taken away from them. I mean, I know, my wife, for instance, is a teacher. she loves if you take teaching completely away, that's going to be a difference in the quality of life. You need people that are passionate about those things to do things for people, to be able to do so. And if you take away, like you said, a huge portion of people who are able to do so remotely or do something that they really want to do, that's not only a quality of life that's lost in the individual, but also that how they are able to contribute to their community in a positive way, even beyond, like you said, the world we live in, the tax money that there from the taxable income, but whatever they're doing, if they're passionate about it. And this is, kind of goes back a little bit to the certificate, or not the certificate of need, but the what do you call them? The occupational licensing. So if you're taking away someone's passion because they can't upfront, pay the cost of whatever the education is they need, or whatever the licensing that they have to pay the government to get, it's ridiculous. It blows my mind that we put all of these barriers in place in front of folks to be able to do something that they want to do and something that would improve their quality of life. Especially
the argument actually is a certificate of need if you're a healthcare professional.
Right.
So
that's true.
That was controversial because people who lean right would say, well, I don't want them getting more. And to explain to them, we're going to give them exactly the same amount, but it's going to cost you less.
Right.
Because we don't have to prove that someone's disabled 16 times a year.
Right. It's so true.
And, getting that into people's heads is difficult. It really, really is. Although when you find people who have personal experience or experience close to someone who's personally experienced it, they're much more amenable to that message.
Right.
Which, in case in point, if you're out there, Libertarian Party, and you're listening, no one wants their freedoms more than someone who has been trapped inside their home their entire lives. Seek us out. We're usually intelligent. We're usually fairly brainy. And I guarantee you we're motivated.
Absolutely.
So, and case in point, how does this all tie together, right? And why am I wearing a shirt today, right?
I was just going to talk to you a little bit about that. I know your doctor kind of whispered something in your ear a little bit, and I know just from knowing you, I know you're an advocate. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and how you've used cannabis as such a positive kind of enabler for you to be able to do a little bit more and feel better throughout the day. And I want to hear a ton more about that.
Well, in my personal experience, opiates, this is where it started. Opiates made me fidgety, itchy, and sweaty. And when you have all of your limbs broken at once, that's not a situation you enjoy.
Yeah.
So when I was given the advice to try cannabis, despite it being illegal when I was 12 years old, I found a way, and I tried cannabis, and lo and behold, it worked a lot better. This right here is CBD hemp. It's low THC. I'm not against THC, but right now this is what's legal, and I am a candidate, and so I am being a good boy, which is kind of garbage. Although, we'll just ignore what's off camera, right? So the Nug of Knowledge is something that I've gotten involved in. It's a new company that's trying to hook up the growers, small growers in particular, of quality, legal CBD hemp.
Yep. With
people who need it. This is legal in all 50 states, so you can order it online. It can be mailed.
Yep.
And I'm a big proponent of it because CBD in particular actually directly treats the main symptom of my genetic disorder. A study out of Israel shows that CBD decreases the healing time and increases the healing quality of bone in a fracture.
Right.
So basically, if you've got a broken bone right now and you're watching this, go to nugofknowledge.com
right.
and use the promo code TOM for 52 and get yourself some CBD cannabis because it will help.
I'm just putting that in the comments now so that people have both the nugofknowledge.com and Tom for 52 promo code.
Interestingly, we do have CBD infused honey on there. And as much as I'm going to smoke this in a minute, I am all about infusions. I have over the years learned how to make my own, get the most from the extraction, and I make cakes.
That's awesome.
If I eat this for dessert, I'm going to sleep well. I'm going to wake up without any inflammation. I'm not going to have any pain. And pardon the pun, but I'll have a bounce in my step. And it is delicious. It is grain-free. I'm going to take a bite because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Absolutely. No, that's great. Yeah, and I think, it's great to be able to have, like you said, a product that is legal in all 50 states that people can use. And I've heard, and there's some downside to that too. There's a lot of companies out there that are taking advantage of that. They're providing oils that don't have, they've been tested. They have like little to no CBD in them. And this, being able to buy CBD flower, you're getting, CBD there. Even the worst quality you could possibly get, you're still getting a good percentage of CBD in that. And these sound like really high quality growers that are partnering with Nug of Knowledge to do this.
Oh, absolutely. And each one comes with a spec sheet of what you can expect to have in its quantity.
That's awesome.
CBD and terpenes. I hope to go forward and do some tutorials on how to get the most out of your product through edibles.
Yeah.
But we do have a couple other products. The CBD honey is really nice. It's a little pricey, but they also save bees. That's a company we're partnering with that actually rescues bees when they move into someone's home and uses them to produce a CBD product.
That's awesome.
But
I've heard bees too. I heard they love cannabis flower. Mm-hmm. I've heard it's one, like, people are saying that it could significantly impact in a positive way the bee communities if we were able to grow, kind of all over the place in public, out in the open. We'd be able to help significantly with a lot of the bee population because they absolutely love cannabis flower.
Yes, they do. Actually, I've seen some projects going with that. I mean, there's at least several CBD honey producers out there now.
That's great.
But there's also one other thing that I want to point on. There is something called Delta 8 THC. What's illegal that we're familiar with is Delta 9 THC.
Yep.
Delta 8 is like its baby cousin. It's not quite as potent for its effects, but it's perfectly legal. Yep. You can also get that on the Nug of Knowledge.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and we'll be coming out with some cool gear. Some of it's already on there, T-shirts, sweatshirts. But I've always had the slogan that I tell people personally, grassy is classy, and we'll have some shirts coming out that will say grassy is classy, and you can be your own advocate within the community.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know just from talking to you a little bit, I know you've mentioned as well kind of the, I don't know the exact, it's Nugs and Hugs or Nugs for Hugs, that part of the organization. I'd love to hear more of that. That sounds great.
No, that's a very important part of the program. It's a compassionate care program called Nugs and Hugs.
Okay.
So every time you make a purchase on the website, a portion of those profits will go to Nugs and Hugs, which will be to help people who can't afford their medicinal cannabis get medicinal cannabis. And I've been pushing for a additional donation at your checkout. You want to add $1 to support that.
Right.
That whole dollar goes in towards that. You see this with other fundraisers everywhere.
Yeah. Even just like a roundup or something, folks, always just click that. It's a very easy to do thing, and it builds up over time. They have 100 sales that day. That could be 100 or somewhere around $75, $100. That would be great.
So we're trying to tie this all in together still, right?
Yep.
When we look at our economy, we need to realize that when the ACA came out, it took over healthcare.
Yep.
It was a government takeover of healthcare. And at that time, healthcare was 1/3 of our economy. What has happened in other countries when they take over 1/3 or more of the economy?
Usually doesn't do well. I mean, I'm not a big advocate of the government taking over that portion.
Well, let's just say do your research, folks. Bad things happen. Now, I'm a disabilities advocate.
Yep.
I have a lot of experience working one-on-one with a very wide range of different disabilities and health conditions. Typically, well, at least 10 years ago, not so much now, that's getting less and less, but it still happens.
Yep.
When you run into someone with a severe disability issue, they have a duffel bag of prescriptions.
Right.
And most of those prescriptions are to counteract the side effects of some of those prescriptions.
Right.
Cannabis is shown to replace many of those prescriptions that are counteracting side effects of certain prescriptions.
Right.
So maybe there are some prescriptions you really do justifiably need.
Yep.
Then cannabis is an excellent adjunct.
Right.
To further point, good cannabis can actually replace some of those original medications. And don't listen to me. I'm not a doctor. Talk to your doctor and see what he thinks. Because mine said, try cannabis 28 years ago.
Right. No, I mean, I think there, once, and this is where, some folks get held up on what we do if we legalize it at a national level and then it gets taxed, and there's, we get through this kind of horrible bastardization of what it should be, of just kind of everyone grows and, gives, and you can have it at the farmers markets and all that stuff. It probably won't be that way. But if they do legalize it at the federal level, the research that can be done to prove these things and help people is so much more important. And the folks that won't be thrown in jail for smoking a plant is so much more important than, and I'd love for it to be done right the first time, but we know that's just not the case. It's not going to happen.
I'm all in favor of good steps, but here's what I'm worried about. Right? New York has a medical cannabis, although New York being New York says marijuana when it should be saying cannabis.
Right.
It does have a medical cannabis program. Here's the problem. The dispensaries are few and far between.
Yep.
For me, it's an hour drive. I don't drive.
Right.
Transportation that's accessible is extremely expensive.
Right.
So there's no going to get that for me. Beyond that, in my situation, being beholden to welfare and healthcare, because there is no difference in New York anymore.
Right.
I would have to go through a pain management specialist. That's expensive. That's in the tax dime.
Right.
My neighbors are poor and they pay taxes. I'm sorry. There's no way that I can continue to entertain these systems to any degree more than absolutely necessary.
Yep.
And not feel guilty, right? That's another issue when you're in a situation like this. If you understand how it works, if you understand who's paying for it, and you're in a poor community, or you just know of a poor community, and you're looking at the situation saying, I'm getting all this help, it costs way more than it should, and those poor bastards are paying for it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel awful that you feel awful for that. You know what I mean? I just, it sucks that's kind of the situation that you're put in, and especially, with the medical cannabis, the way that it's done in New York, because it's a very different system than what we have in Massachusetts, which is definitely not perfect. But folks can either grow themselves or grow as a caregiver for someone locally. So, your neighbor who has just a little bit of land out back. I mean, it's not there. It does take something to get, high quality crop, but it doesn't take a lot to get like a mid-level quality. I mean, it's called weed for a reason. It grows and grows. It wouldn't take a lot for someone to be a caregiver to you beside your house and help you out, or you do it yourself if you need to. You know what I mean? Like,
it's really not difficult at all, in my opinion. Luckily, I am in upstate New York, and in upstate New York, people don't care about the law so much if they feel it's unjust.
Yes.
And even our sheriffs are usually pretty considerate about that.
Yeah.
They're usually some of the more constitutional people you can find in the state, is our rural upstate New York sheriffs.
Yep.
Now, the problem that I see, and you hit on this, right? They're going to tax the hell out of it, right? So that's what they're looking for in New York. I believe I read somewhere that Cuomo wants to tax it on its potency.
Yeah.
Okay, so those of us who are the most sick and in the most pain have to pay the most, be damned if we're poor. Only rich people get to have it. Anybody who's poor and suffering, we don't care. Let them be poor and suffering.
Yeah, I don't get it.
No.
And it seems so, against logic to do something like I do not understand the reason for that. It's not like if you go into a store for alcohol, even you can buy a bottle of Everclear, which is 95% alcohol, for less than a nice bottle of whiskey, which is 40% alcohol, and it's not taxed on that alcohol percentage. There's beer and wine is differently taxed, I guess, than hard alcohol. But it just seems like such a silly, especially when people are using it for pain management. It seems like such a silly way to do so, and even especially to not have. And I haven't seen a ton of the plan, but I've seen a little bit. It doesn't seem like there's a big break, whether it's medical use or recreational use, which there isn't. Massachusetts, they do give you a break on taxes, medicinal versus recreational.
Oh, well, that would be nice. But here's the thing. In New York, if you're a large company from out of state or out of country and you're coming here to do a large subsidized project, you know what you don't pay?
Taxes. Yep.
But if you're a sick, disabled person that wants some weed, you know what you're going to pay?
Taxes.
Yeah. And here's the thing. That sick, disabled person's money is funded by taxes. Right. So then we're taxing taxes.
Right.
How is that reciprocal system ever going to work?
Right. Yeah, it's you're double dipping on something that's being spent in a system that should be, especially any sort of medical use, cannabis or any of the prescription stuff, to tax things like that and to tax even physical things that you need to kind of go about your day seems just insane. That keeps going and going back into the system that's then costing more money. And there's got to be a much better way to handle this. And I, you've shown some of the ways that you've been able to do things that really do more for less, which is, I think we've talked about before. Libertarians are good at doing more with less.
Right. So if you're out there and you're a voter, you're not a libertarian, and you're considering either voting libertarian or becoming a libertarian or becoming active in the party, what you need to think about is, do we want to keep paying more for less, or do we want to get more than pay less? And that's really the difference between the Libertarian Party and other parties, no matter what issue you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and I think that one of the things that, there's a common misconception, and I've seen this, time after time, and we've talked about it a little bit as well, you and I, even just a couple conversations we've had to kind of prep for this, is, a lot of folks think because there is a message of we're against taxation, that we immediately hate poor and disabled folks. Mm-hmm. That is immediately, kind of a first knee-jerk reaction to someone hearing that statement. And in reality, you're advocating for a more voluntary system because you've seen that it's worked better for you, at least.
It's worked better all my life, too.
Right.
I mean, when I needed a wheelchair repaired, it could take 6 months to get a professional through the state to come and fix the chair, where it took me maybe a week for me to wait on my buddy who's a mechanic. Right.
And just
now, technically,
you go.
Technically, my buddy repairing the chair voided the warranty, and then technically, if the state found out, they could just say, "Well, we're not going to pay for it. And we're not going to repair it again because you worked on it, and the warranty is voided." And then you know what happens? They buy you a new one.
Right.
They'll spend a few $100s to repair it.
Yeah, and I mean that's indicative of the society too that we're in. This kind of more of a throwaway culture, and I think part of that is because it's, if you're looking at anything and trying to fix it, like you said, especially like a vehicle or something like that. If I were to go, I got a truck out there. If I go out and fix my truck myself, I could void the warranty from the manufacturer and not get what I need. So And if I go to the dealership, they're going to charge me over $100 an hour to work on it. So there's got to, I understand voiding the warranty on something if someone that doesn't know what they're doing goes in and does it. But I feel like there's something that could be done in the system, and whether it be an education piece or even just a kind of a prove that you can do something, that the chair fixes that you've done are not, something that are hurting the chair. They're improving the chair.
The other thing to remember, though, is the wheelchairs are far less complicated than an automobile.
Very true.
If you spent a few hours looking at it and know how to use basic tools, you can make most repairs.
Right. No, that's very true. So I think, there's a lot of good pieces that I think can be. So I think one of the things that's broken down, and I think this is one of the reasons, and I think we could advocate this as libertarians to try and help, the incremental steps. I would love to see sweeping fixes across the board, but we know the way that the thing is set up, it's small pieces here and there.
And utopia overnight never works.
Right.
I mean, we saw that with the ACA. It caused a lot of people to die. It caused a lot of people to suffer. They forced it through. They signed it in.
Right.
And like that. And actually, we had this term going around back then called death panels. Right?
I remember that.
And people don't realize that they're real. They are very real. They're just not what the word kind of makes you think of.
Right.
It's not a group of people deciding whether or not you live or die. It's a group of professionals sitting around deciding whether you live or die. But even they don't realize that they're deciding whether you live or die.
Right.
They're just bureaucrats.
Right.
They're deciding check marks and boxes on pieces of paper, and they don't realize that they are actually a death panel.
Right.
And if you want to know why the government systems don't work, watch the movie Brazil.
Okay.
The whole thing about the guy trying to get his hair fixed.
Interesting. I'll take a look at that. That's a good call. I think one of the big things that if government, and I don't fully believe that everyone in government does want to fix the problems. I think there's a lot of grassroots folks that are starting to get into the system now, and we've seen a lot more of that, I feel like, over the last 10, 15 years that do want to help folks. But I don't know if that's the case with a lot of the folks that are there for the power and for kind of their to build their political whatever. But if folks were to go and talk to, you don't see it as much. You say, you see commercials that say they want to hear from you. They want to hear from their constituents and they want to meet. But I've emailed, state reps. I've emailed, national representation as well. You're lucky to get back in 6 months. You never hear back.
I previously spent over 10 years of my life letter writing to Albany over disability issues with nothing more than a canned response. They just simply do not want to address it.
Yeah. And it's, like you were saying, if people were able to go back and talk to you and say what worked, what didn't, how, and the scary thing is they don't do that. And then they make these pieces of legislation, or there's companies that write these pieces of legislation to put through that benefit their particular pharmaceutical company or whatever. But even if they're the one writing the pieces of legislation, they have no idea what what that checkbox is doing. And like you said, it is life and death often.
So in disability systems in New York, I'm known as a consumer, and social workers, check off that they, quote, served me, right? It doesn't check off, was I satisfied? Did I get what I needed? Was happiness and healthiness a product of what happened? That's not in there. It's just that I was served. Right. And then that's their only metric. You hear Larry Sharp talking about checkboxing a lot. That's what he's talking about. Right. It's not did we get a good end result? It's did somebody do something and government can take credit for it. Right.
No, that's awful. And you and I could talk about this all day. I feel like we had a call earlier this week just to check on things, and we talked for an hour and a half almost. We're coming up against it. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of time at the end to talk about anything you want. You can go back to some of the Nug of Knowledge stuff, or really whatever you want to kind of leave us with. I'd love to hear it.
Well, if you're looking for a medicinal alternative, or if you're already familiar with it and you want a quality product, go to nugofknowledge.com, NUGGOF knowledge.com, and check out the product line. You can use the promo code TOM for 52, TOMFOR 52, to get a discount. And remember, every purchase does put a little bit towards the nugs and hugs to help people who can't afford their cannabis. Furthermore, keep an eye on it. We're looking to expand the product line.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you're a legal grower of CBD hemp, give us a shout. But let's talk libertarianism for a bit here.
Yeah.
There's libertarianism in politics, right? Being the politician running for office, making a on-paper legislative change that's beneficial to your constituents. That's very libertarian. But if you're not up to that, there's something else you can do.
Yep.
The libertarians who crowdfunded this wheelchair, I guarantee you it didn't take a lot of their own time, saved the taxpayers $13,000,
right,
and helped someone in desperate need at the same time. And what does that do? What does that do when we find the solution ourselves without the government? That takes away their power.
Yeah.
We have said, look, we're doing this ourselves. Stay out of it.
Yeah.
And the more we can do that with wheelchairs, feeding the homeless, helping someone in any way the government purports to be the only authority on help for it, the more we can take their power away.
Absolutely.
So, turn off the news. Stay away from social media because Facebook is trash. Twitter is a dumpster fire. If you're going to be on there, get your hot dogs and marshmallows and take it easy. But I recommend getting the hell away from it and do something good for someone or maybe someone you don't know.
Yep.
You can do it directly. You can use a volunteer organization, nonprofit organization, although in New York our nonprofits are very heavily restrained. So I would advocate in this state to just reach out and help someone.
Yeah. Yeah, not to mention you build communities that way. You make new friends that way. You make potentially someone that could help you professionally. Even you make contacts that way, grow your network, and you're actually helping people. And I feel like that piece that actually generates or helps create chemicals in your brain that makes you happier long term. I mean, there's actually something healthy about going out and just helping people.
Absolutely, actually, and I can, I'm a very prime example. I hate to keep using myself as the libertarian example here, but 1 year, they crowdfunded a wheelchair for me. Less than a year later, they crowdfunded my trip to Orlando to be a part of the national convention. That is the longest trip and the closest thing to a vacation I have ever had in my life. Very adventurous for me. And I enjoyed every bit of it. I'm the guy who wasn't supposed to live 24 hours when he was born. I'm the guy that was given repeated medical death sentences over and over again. And I'm the guy who, trudged through and by my own tenacity survived long enough to find the people who would help me. And libertarians are the people who would help me. Yeah.
No, that's...
So if you're a libertarian, you got to be that guy. Go help somebody.
Yeah, that's awesome. And don't sell yourself short either. I've seen videos of you going out and helping other people as well, doing community cleanups, helping build porches, going out there and helping your community do things as well. You deserve a ton of that credit as well, Tom.
Well, actually, the most important work I do is that I do reach out to individuals in similar situations to my own that we've talked about at length and help them find other solutions throughout the campaign. So in Orlando, I'm talking to the guy who's at the cashier counter for where we get our sandwiches and salads for lunch. And, he's asking me about my condition because his son has a condition and looked similar. It was not the same condition, but his son lives in New York.
Yep.
He had a pretty severe issue going on and was not getting covered. And there was a new technological solution. And I gave him my phone number. We hooked up. And throughout my campaign, we got together. We made some calls together. And he got the piece of equipment he needed. Awesome. He's in a safer situation. He doesn't have to worry about getting an off-the-books job and getting turned in and losing his housing and health care, as almost happened recently. Right? Somebody turned this guy in because he was trying to survive.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, just that trip allowed me to help someone put their own life on track.
Right.
And I remember, I got 2 phone calls from him towards the end there that were really important. We were canvassing, and he called to tell me it shipped. And then I was like in a huff trying to get out of here to go to some event. And I took another call from him quick, and he had gotten it, and he's doing well. And there's nothing better than that. Yeah. The systems failed, and I could do it. If I can do it, you can do it.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. I am super happy to have you on. This was great. It was super informative for me. I learned a ton. I hope folks out there learned a ton. And if there's anyone out there who could benefit from some help, I know Tom is very willing to help. I'm willing to help find any sort of resource that I can help find. And if you need Tom and you don't have his information, you should have it because I put a bunch of stuff in the comments. But if you don't, reach out to me and I'll gladly hook you up with Tom if need be, or try and help you out myself if I can. So this is awesome, Tom. I loved having you on. This was a great talk, and I'm glad that I got to know you a little bit more as well.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And remember, direct help it helps more and it costs less. The Libertarians do more with less.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Tom, and I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you again very, very soon.
I'm going to finish this cake, so it's guaranteed to be wonderful.
Sounds good. See you later. So that was Tom Queter in New York. If you have a chance and you're driving through, give Tom a shout. It sounds like you can have not only some incredible meal that he's cooked for you, but also he makes some incredible CBD cakes and stuff. That sounds wonderful. No, this was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Tom. I loved talking with him and getting to know him a little bit more. I'm not lying. When we had our pre-production talk, we talked for like an hour plus when it was going to be like a quick 10-minute chat or something. It's great to talk with him and kind of learn a ton. I learned a ton tonight, and I hope you all did as well. Next up, we have next Tuesday, we're going to have 2 podcasts next week, one on Tuesday night and one on Thursday night. On Tuesday, we actually have someone I know very well. I've known him since we were probably 7 or 8 years old and playing basketball. He is now actually he's got a PhD in I believe it's cybersecurity. But he's also kind of through that and through his own kind of education has gotten into cryptocurrency, and he's going to sit down and talk with us a bunch on, some of the basics and some of the, how to get into crypto and what it's about. I'm going to learn a lot as well because I just started learning on my own. And then after that, we have Ari Gerbeck. They're going to be talking to us about mutual aid in Louisiana. They have an incredible event going on right now. It's a craft fair, and I'm going to share it in the community so that you folks can jump on and buy raffles. So I believe there's an online raffle for that as well, and I want to promote that before they come on and do the kind of aftermath and see how it went. It's raising a bunch of money for one of the organizations down there in Louisiana. So I hope you go, folks, check that out. And support area. I mean, it's gonna be a fun week next week. I can't wait to have more folks on to talk to you all about different mutual aid programs, cryptocurrency, and kind of how we can do better than our governments at running our lives. So I hope you all enjoyed tonight, and meet us next week on Post Political Podcast. Thanks, everybody.